Welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. This is the special Tesla Roadster version of our podcast. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning. Welcome, everybody.
We are waiting for one of our engineers to join us to talk about the main topic, which is the vehicle management system error. But before we get there, got a few news items to report.
Yes.
We got a call from a customer up in Henderson, Nevada this last week, and the story oftentimes goes like this. He says, I sold my Roadster 2 years ago, and I'm missing the car, and I'm buying another one now. It's a very common thing that we hear. They're not your average Ford and Chevys, and you upgrade, downgrade, whatever it is, you know.
Right.
When you sell a Roadster, people tend to miss them, and it's called separation anxiety.
Oh, the Roadster is such a unique car that I can only imagine that, you've got a close community of people. It's more than just owning a car. It's an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience includes having the others that you can talk to. It includes the quirks and personality that each car brings to the table. And of course, it includes just the pure joy of being able to drive with the top down and feel like you're just going, with all that almost instantaneous response of the electric vehicle.
Yeah. And we see some of that separation anxiety in the vehicles that come in with major work that needs to be done, like the PEM blew up, for example, or the battery blew up or whatever. And oftentimes these customers, if they come from the Four Seasons area of the country, by the time summer hits, they're pretty anxious to get their car back because they want to drive it again.
Right.
So that's another form of separation anxiety. But those of you that own Roadsters, you probably know exactly what we're talking about. Highlander chimed in. He says, we forgot the sunglass commercial for the last podcast. We just finished a podcast about a half hour ago or so, which is our general EV podcast. We'll have to squeeze one in here.
Yeah, we'll try to squeeze one in here in just a little bit.
Yeah. So once Brad, the engineer, gets here, we can start getting into the VMS issues. But in the meantime, we've got some charging information we wanted to talk about. And this was apparently some advice that was offered at one of the Tesla service centers that the customer needed to do a range charge every month on his car. And actually, the best advice came from Henry Sharp, the inventor of the CAN Junior, CAN Senior, and a Euro version of that. And he says, the advice to charge in range mode once a month is obsolete by nearly 9 years. Tesla changed the firmware in 2011 to balance after every standard mode charge. For long periods of storage, it's safer to leave it plugged into standard mode. Storage mode, which some people think is the way to leave your car charging when you go on vacation or extended periods, is actually very dangerous, and they probably wouldn't have selected that or created that option in the Roadster had they realized how many Roadsters got bricked from that type of charge. The problem in storage mode is it doesn't leave enough of a cushion of charge if something goes wrong. And what I mean by going wrong, you're on vacation, thunderstorm rolls through, kills the power, circuit breaker trips, and you don't realize it until you get back from vacation. And when you're in storage mode, it only charges to like 20%. And the rate from 20% down to bricked is very quick.
Well, especially when the rate of 100% or 85%, I guess, standard charge down to bricked can be as little as 7 to 10 days. That means a problem in storage mode, that could be 24 hours to 48 hours before it would be bricked.
Right. Now, it's okay to do a range charge occasionally if you're going on a long trip with a Tesla Roadster. Now, some of these rules don't apply to the new R80 packs because those are, new cells. But let's not forget that no one expected the Roadster ESS packs to last over 10 years. That was the original design life.
Right.
And everyone is amazed that we're going on 16 years. Our advice, since these packs oftentimes are 16 years going on 17 years, do not go below 40 miles range and stay away from full charges or range charges. The firmware even warns you when you try to do a range charge. This could decline the quality or the life of your cells.
Right. And, I also like the advice one of the other members had given, where they reminded us all that if you're doing a storage mode charge, storage mode doesn't balance the battery.
Right. Yep. Good point.
And it can cause the battery to go out of balance over time. And you end up in a situation where it might take weeks of storage of standard mode charges to get the battery back in balance.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Jesse, we've got an image we can throw up here, or we bring our engineer in, and this one is called mats. Oh, it's in here somewhere. There we go. Yeah, mat cleaning. So one of the things that I wanted to show you is
That's in the wrong format. I can't open that one. Mark, can you
I'll get it
do that real
taken
quick?
care of. Yeah.
there's
there's
certain.
3 of them in there, sorry, that are in that format, or 4 of them.
Oh, there are. You'll have to tell us which ones they are then. Which format is it that's giving you?
That's the
That-
HEIC.
Yeah, it's the iPhone format.
Oh,
And I know how to change that.
okay. So certain things that we do to every Roadster that comes in or leaves, and a number of things, but one of them which really makes a striking difference visually is we take out the mats that are in the car, and as you know, there is a Tesla embroidery, white letters toward the seating position, and we've never seen that clean. Some are so dark you can barely see that there's a letter there. So what we do, we've got a special rack out there with a pressure washer, soap, and we make those mats look brand new, like the ones on the right there. And it's amazing how that white embroidery just comes back as bright as can be white. We've got our engineer here now. Why don't we bring Brad over? And Brad is going to join us for the discussion on the main topic, which is the vehicle management system, and some of the things that you can do if you get that error, which will disable your car. Got room here. We can spread things out a little bit. Yep.
Good. Thanks for joining us, Brad.
And got a microphone for you and a headset. Jesse likes you to be right up on that microphone.
No problem.
2 inches
No problem.
is his favorite, right? So before we get into the vehicle management system portion, got another thing we can throw up. Is the Lug Nuts image okay to post? We find that a number of customers from time to time get a flat tire, of course.
Mhm.
And then when they take it to the tire shop, they say, well, you've got locking lug nuts on there. Where's your key? They go in the trunk to get the key, and they find out that the last tire guy that used it used an impact driver and broke the key. Now you got a flat tire that you can't get off. And there's no simple, easy way. It's actually the other image, Jesse, called lug nuts.
Looks like we have a JPEG for it.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's our recommendation after you have solved your lug nut problem.
Let me pull that one out for you.
So the you've got a broken key. They can't get the tire. They can't get the wheel off. We have a library of keys that we offer to the community for free. You don't get to keep it. You get to use it. It's just like the library. You check it out, you check it back in, right? That's the only way that we can keep the supply of keys, because these things are extremely difficult to find, to purchase. And here was the library. It's grown a bit since then. This was a couple of years ago. And you can see how many variations they are. There's a little letter on the back of the key that tells you what style it is, and they are not interchangeable. So you have to get the right key. If you need one, let us know. We'll overnight one to you, get your tire problem solved, and then we recommend that you go the next step, and that's that other image that you had up, Jesse. Change those lug nuts. Get rid of the keys. If you want to keep the keys for collector value, put it in the trunk. But change them to these beautiful, shiny, zinc-plated, and we've got black available also, by the way, if you like that better. to these lug nuts, and you'll never have this key problem again.
Mhm.
A full set of these, 20 of them, I think, is on our e-store for $47. It's inexpensive insurance.
Yep.
Compared to the pain that you go through if you can't get your wheel off and you got a flat tire. You got some tow charges involved there, I'm sure, and
Oh, yes.
So that's our recommendation. And again, the library is free. On our shop page, you can, if it's after hours, you can sign up and let us know that you need it shipped to you. Send us a picture of the broken key or the letter on the back of your key so that we send you the right one. All right, Highlander, he said, I have met Roadster owners, and I said, do you know Pete Gruber? And they said that that's where we buy our Roadster parts from. Okay.
And then on Instagram, Zavin Fani says, what alive?
Uh-huh.
Yes, we are a live podcast today and not a pre-recorded.
Very much so. That's why all the fumbling is going on here and the last-minute picture changes. All right, so I want to introduce Brad Luchek. He's one of our members at GMC, and he's our engineer that handles a lot of software issues and electronics issues in the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So a typical scenario with a Tesla Roadster going into this VMS VDS communications fault screen.
Yes.
Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, just kind of made some notes here as far as understanding what the error is. And there's two things that are good to reference on this code. On the lower, I don't know if they have an image of that or not, but when you see the VDS screen, there's the name of the code itself, VMS, VDS, comms fault, and then there's an ID on the lower left, and those are important pieces of information to have.
This one is 1900.
Yeah, 1900 is the one we're looking at. And so this one specifically is related to the communications between the VDS and the VMS, and there's some communication fault, and that could be for a lot of reasons. Wiring issues, maybe the CAN bus, which is a way how the car is communicating with other components of the car. It's like a language that the car uses to communicate. There might be some errors in that system. Maybe the firmware needs to be up. There's just the hardware is failing.
One customer actually had a faulting OVMS unit
Yeah.
that
that
hung
too.
the CAN signals and created this error.
Yep.
Can you pull your mic over to you?
Who?
Me.
Oh, you. Oh, making sure. And so, yeah, there's a lot of so when you have many different avenues that this can be, the cause of this error, what we do is we offer a remote service so that we can send a laptop similar to this out to you and some cables so you can connect to your car.
So let's go to step 1 and 2 then.
Yeah.
All right. The first step is when you get this error,
Yeah.
take your charge port door.
Yeah.
By
There's several
opening
things. Yeah.
and closing it 7 to 10 times, wait about 2 seconds in between each one. That will actually reset the VMS to some extent. Not as thorough as the next step, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's the first thing that you do is open and close it a number of times. Each time you do, you'll have your white LED ring illuminate the charge port.
Yep.
Close it, and then you'll see it goes off. Each time you do that, it's going to do a reset. That may solve the problem. The second step is going into the vehicle management system module, and this is what one of those looks like. It says VMS right here, and you have 2 connectors, a black and a blue connector. And which connector do they want to unplug and plug back in?
The blue connector.
The blue.
I have them do both just to inspect. Sometimes to just take a look and make sure there's no issues. So you do both. But what you're doing when you're unplugging those connectors is you're kind of like pulling the plug on a computer. You're forcing it to reboot when you plug it back in. This is a good way to manually reboot your VMS by disconnecting.
And where exactly is that VMS located again?
I think we take a picture. We got a picture of it. I think, right?
We have the picture.
Yeah.
I didn't download it. It would be HIC anyway, but
Okay. Yeah. Well, so if you in the footwell of the passenger seat area, you'll see that right at the top, kind of at the top of that area. This is kind of hanging upside down, and it's mounted like this. You'd probably see, and you'd see You actually can see the black and blue connector there and a bunch of wires connected out. But all you do is look up in there and you'd see it's very obvious. And it's only really mounted by two nuts right here, and it's slid. There's a little slot where this slides in. And so sometimes when you are maybe wanting to disconnect these connectors, you might want to loosen it up to give you some room because it's pretty tight in there with all the wiring. But just keep in mind that you don't have to worry about two other nuts on the other side. There's only two here to loosen, and you kind of pull to the side. And that helps you kind of get some room there to pulling those. So that is one thing to do. And sometimes the charge door solution doesn't always work, but it's a good start to some self solutions when you're at home and trying to troubleshoot. But if you disconnect these connectors and reboot it and this code still comes up, you've done the charge port solution, that's where the next level comes in that we were talking about earlier, and that's where maybe you need to we need to assist you in a more setting a laptop out to you guys.
Right. Now, what you'll see underneath here is, of course, the two connectors. There is a cable that will be hanging there as well.
Yeah.
Don't be concerned about that. It doesn't mean it came loose. That is a diagnostic a port cable that the service people use to work on your Roadster.
Yep.
The other thing that I caution when plugging and unplugging the VMS module, the Roadster used a variety of different types of connectors, and they weren't making this product for the military, so they were not mil-spec.
That's for sure.
In one connector inside the ESS pack, they needed a certain type of connector with a number of pins, and they looked around and said, what can we use? And they used a dryer plug and socket.
Yes.
Well, in the world of manufacturing, you have various grades of connectors and plugs and sockets. There's some that are one-time use, like the dryer plug. You're not going to take that apart anymore unless it gets serviced every 10 years or whatever. So this is not a robust connector, and you need to make sure that you carefully plug that back in. And if you have different problems afterwards, it's because something got tweaked, a pin got bent or splayed or whatever.
Yeah, it's not hard to do, and I've made the attempts to contort myself up underneath the
it's
dash.
interesting.
I can kind of do it with one arm and laying on one shoulder. And it always felt like the easiest way to do it would be to sit upside down in the car with my head under the dash and my feet sticking into the air.
Yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah,
Just to lay down in there.
With the convertible, because you can do that.
Yeah, because you can do that, and that way you can at least kind of see what you're doing. It's not the easiest thing to get to, but it's possible to do.
Yes.
So we've got steps 1, charge port door. Step 2, plug and unplug the CAN connector cables on the VMS module up underneath the passenger compartment. And then the third step,
And just
course,
really quick, a little tip, just for people when you're just pulling the connector on these, is that when you're actually going to remove, I recommend actually pulling a little bit on it, pulling it tight, like snug. There's a clip that locks it in. Just pull it tight and then pull the lock up, and it stays open, and then you could pull out the connector.
Oh,
just so you
great
know.
point.
And that's a really smooth way of doing it. So just when you first do it, pull them where you can't, it's pretty snug, and then you flip the clip and you'll see that it stays up, and then you could pull it out, and then you'll avoid damage.
And then you give it a couple of minutes or so, and then plug it back in.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, and then the third step is, it looks like there may be a problem with the firmware, and the firmware needs to be reloaded. And there's some PIC processors in here. It's a mini computer, basically.
Yep.
And what the firmware does, of course, it's the software that's running on those processors, and it may need a firmware reload. And that's where our laptop comes into play, where it then gets downloaded. Now, we can't do it remotely. It's not like your Tesla Model S where there's a mothership and we see each car on a node. These guys, the Roadsters, don't communicate anymore that way. When the 2G network went dead, all of remote connectivity went away. If you have an OVMS box, it still doesn't allow you to reload the firmware yet. Although Mark Webb Johnson, I understand, is working on that.
Okay.
That will reestablish
cool.
remote connectivity to the Roadster. But in the meantime, it's going to require us to send you a laptop with some cables, and we'll walk you through a phone support session to actually reload the software in your car.
Yep. And that just entails, us shipping out the laptop, just having your Roadster near internet access, wireless internet access, and just having a little bit of agility to get the cable into that diagnostic port that's right by the VMS. If you go in there in that area, you'll see one cable that is not connected to anything and actually connects. Let's see if I can pull it out for you.
And by the way, for those of you in the service business, we make these cables. Our manufacturing group makes custom data cables. And everything that you see Brad pulling out of the bag here is product that we have made in our production group.
Yeah, this one's from a third party. USB.
The CAN
converter.
adapter.
Yeah, CAN adapter. So we have that. But this we make here. Yeah, we have this made for us. And some customers have asked that if they want their own cable. So we actually, I mean, is it on the
We
website
sell these.
yet?
Oh, yeah, I think
So we have it on the
these our-
website. So that I do recommend having one of these if you can. And then you just need to have this as well. And then you be able to, the software is open source to what I think was in November when Tesla
when
open
Tesla
source
released
everything.
it,
So you can actually download this Tesla software on your computer. I've helped a couple of customers get set up that way. And then they ordered cables. During a remote session, I could help you with that as well. So you could have a laptop set up where you can actually have access to this software and have the cables, and you can troubleshoot some things yourself if you feel comfortable. You can.
And we do this out of the country too, right?
Yeah, I've helped people in Europe, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
I've even triangulated. We had a gentleman in Europe. He was in I don't know, Czech Republic or somewhere, and the car was 600 miles away from him, and that guy didn't speak English, so he translated for me for the gentleman back and forth, and I remoted into the car as he's translating. And so we can do things like that. And it's so when a remote session happens, you connect up the cables to the car, the laptop fired up, and then we, over a phone call, and in Europe or outside of the United States, we'll do WhatsApp connection, and we'll communicate that way. And I'll just assist you. And so it's just, I'm on the phone there with you, and we're just in the communication. WhatsApp, a lot of people like doing video chat. I'll do that too. It's fine. And we'll just start the process. So like Pete mentioned, we're doing firmware. We'll start addressing. So this error code, one of the first things we're going to check is, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to erase and reinstall the firmware for the VMS. So we can do that with the laptop. So we'll do that. Some customers, that solved the issue. Sometimes not. So then we go through a process of elimination as much as we can. Now, why is this important? Is because in the past, this didn't exist. You had to ship your car somewhere to get it fixed, so that we could do this in person. But now we can do this remotely. So I think it's a big value for the community. But yeah, it's been super helpful for many. And obviously in that session, there's other questions people have, and I'm able to answer those things and point them to resources, and it's been super helpful.
The logistics with this are, by the way, we have a down payment for the laptop,
Yes.
which is $1,000.
Yes, it's like a
Which is-
deposit. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fully refundable. And then there is a couple of hours of like engineering time.
Correct.
That's associated with that.
Yep.
And we get the laptop back, you get refunded, and your car's running again. And it's
Yeah.
infinitely cheaper than shipping your car somewhere.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Especially if you're out of the country.
Yes.
Now, you may be interested in what's happening inside this box that causes this. Well, years ago, my son Peter, who's a software genius, between him and Ken, they figured out what's going on. When does the corruption occur? And it occurs during a backup, when this thing backs itself up. So armed with that information, we thought, well, let's tell Tesla. So we went to the service centers, and they said, well, we don't, we're not the engineers. You'll have to get corporate, right? So we go to corporate. We finally figure out who the author of the firmware is.
Oh.
I won't mention his name, but we're in contact with him
Yes.
now. He's a cool
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so anyway, in talking to him finally after a couple of months of searching for someone that would be interested in finding out what the problem is and potentially correct it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This author of the firmware, we get him on the phone. He said, look, here's what's going on. He says, I can't talk to you about this. And I don't have permission to do that, because Tesla is very much concerned about their intellectual property. And this was before the open source release of Roadster. I can't imagine that Roadster stuff was intellectual property back then. It was like 5 years ago or so. But still, people were very nervous about talking to anyone about their IP. So I asked him, I said, well, who do we need to get permission from so that you can talk to us so we can describe to you what's going to help you and us with this problem? He says, I can't even tell you that. So now what, right? So anyway, I called Elon Musk. It was on a Saturday morning, and I ran this by him, and I told him, look, this is going to help your company and our company, Elon. We figured out what's going on when this corruption is occurring, and the author, can't talk to us until he gets permission from a higher source. So he said, all right, give me his email, give me his phone number, all that. So we get a call Monday afternoon. This was on a weekend. I talked to him Saturday. And Greg says, well, you got to the right guy finally. And how can I help you guys? It turns out it would have required a major retrofit, so we're just living with it at this point. And that's why it still occurs. But at least we know what's happening, and maybe in the future at some point, the firmware can be repaired and rewritten so that it doesn't have this backup flaw.
And, if there's owners that, this is happening, they can, they can do it themselves if they have the equipment.
Yes.
That does happen. There's some solutions.
And it's not that hard to do, is it?
It's not that hard.
You've coached people.
Yeah. I've coached many people, and then they realize how easy it is, and so it's not that bad.
All right. Speaking of things out of the country, we've got another image here, Jesse. If you can bring up HVAC controller -2. We've got a company and Roadster owner in Europe right now that has a defective 2.0 HVAC controller. These are quite repairable. They're not in production anymore, though. You're not going to be able to find this off the shelf. Amazon doesn't have it. No one has it. So what we ended up doing with this particular customer is he is shipping us his part, and we are going to rebuild it. These are quite rebuildable. There are some engineering improvements that you can make. You see that black around the mount surfaces there? That's a gasket. And as you know, gaskets eventually compress, dry up, get brittle, and this thing sits in a pretty hostile space. It's up underneath the hood vanes, which have large gaps. So if you live in a wet climate, this thing's going to get wet quite often. And so what we end up doing is not only repairing the inside, but also making it weatherproof and changing the gaskets. So this thing extends, it extends its life. And there's some silly little fixes on this. On the other side of this is a little red LED that protrudes through the aluminum casting. It's only about 1/8 of an inch or so. It's very tiny. But when they inserted that LED into that drilled hole in the casting, they put no kind of seal on it. So water will get into there inside that box. The problem with water getting in there is it's not just a 12-volt device. It has 2 voltages in it. 12 volts, which could probably survive a little bit of water, but it's also got 400 volts. And when 400 volts hits water and 400 volts begins to conduct through the water into 12-volt circuitry, you now have chips that are blowing up and you have a mess.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot. I see the HV on the casting there, high voltage.
Yep. So that's something else. I talked to the service manager just now, and what we're going to do, since we're seeing some of these failures, is we're going to put one on the shelf. It doesn't mean that we're going to be able to sell you one. It means that we're going to be able to do an exchange. And the only way to continue to have parts like this is to retrieve cores. So we'll have one on the shelf the next time, and we can cross-ship in that scenario. You ship us yours, we've cross-shipped ours, and your downtime is minimal. Okay.
We have a couple of comments
Questions,
we
yeah.
want to get to before we wrap things up here. MP 2020-21 Says if that doesn't work, you tighten all the others and get a removal tool with a helical inner cone that comes right off. That's going to be in regards to the lug nuts.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then Van Goat has joined us. Says, sorry, I'm late. So thanks for joining us, Van Goat. And he was talking about me sitting upside down in the Roadster, and he says, I would like to see that, Mark.
Me too.
Yeah, the problem is you're going to be calling Phoenix Fire or something to get me unwedged out of that thing.
That'll be a special podcast.
That would be a special podcast.
Jesse, get another image to pop up here. VIN 1238. This is a Roadster 2011 R80 pack Roadster that's sold on Bring a Trailer. And it turns out we were watching this thing accrue some value, and it was hovering around $28,000, $30,000 for the longest time, which doesn't mean much in the world of auctions. Anybody that does auctions realizes, why bid the first few days? Wait until the end of the auction. So it turns out that this battery was just replaced the end of 2023, finalized in February of 2024. It's a 6-month-old battery at best. A 6-month-old battery means it costs the customer $40,000 plus tax.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a $45,000 expense in this car. And I think this one also had some additional work done, which I don't have the numbers for, but let's go with $45,000, right? This thing got up to $70,000 and $12, $70,012. If you do the math here, if this had been a no reserve auction, it would have sold for $25,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that owner would have had a net of $25,000 for his car,
For
which
a
is
fully functioning, brand new battery pack
oh,
Roadster.
that's terrible.
So anyway, this particular one, Bring a Trailer allowed them to do a reasonable reserve. I've heard other complaints that they won't allow a high enough reserve because they don't get paid if there's a high reserve and it doesn't sell. So anyway, again, it reinforces the fact this is a buyer's market. If you're looking for Roadsters right now, this is the time to buy. And for those of you that are looking to sell, this is not the time to sell. We need to create some artificial demand again. And but in the meantime, what we're finding is our Roadster matchmaking site is doing much better than Bring a Trailer, by the way. The percentages for the prices that they're getting is higher. And you don't have the pressure 7 days. And, there is a reserve, and that's what the customer feels it should sell for.
Hey Pete, what do you say? We have some customers that are in Japan or in Asia market, and they have a Roadster they want to, auction. Is our site the best for that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, you can do two different ways of selling on the Roadster matchmaking. We can either do auction like we did with the Chinese Roadsters.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a gentle auction. There is no time limit. They are listed until they're sold and until the seller feels comfortable with the price. The second way to do that is fixed price. And I always suggest, start a little higher than what your strike price is, because everybody likes to feel they got a bargain and they were able to work you down a bit. That was the issue we had in 2021 when the Roadster prices started to go up to $130,000 from $50,000. All of that Roadster matchmaking activity, I think, contributed to that, and that people went higher and higher and higher. But the final thing that makes the matchmaking site so handy is that the buyers talk directly to the sellers. The only reason we're in the equation, if ever, is for tech support, escrow support, transport support, whatever you'd like us to be involved in. But you actually get to negotiate directly with the seller and ask all of the questions to fill in all the gaps. If you look at the Bring a Trailer or any of these auctions, they've got a canned list of content that they put on every single auction. And it's always the same. There's a few unique tidbits. We do the opposite. We ask the sellers, tell us everything about the car, and then tell us why you're selling it. We think that's important as well. And then finally, whoever wants to buy the car can talk to the seller directly and get any other additional tidbits or story that they feel is important to them. Right. A few more. TikTok. Maurizio Diaz says, hello again from Wiesbaden, Germany. Have you heard of it? I've been there. Yes, Wiesbaden. I was born in Rosenheim around Munich, and we usually travel all around Europe when we go back to visit. Maurizio also asks, and he's on TikTok, by the way, Ghost Performance Upgrade gives you 150 horsepower.
Now, the Ghost Performance Upgrade is sold by INGE Next, Ing Next, and it's typically limited for Model 3s and Model Ys. It specifically helps to, if you have a Model 3, let's say base model with without the extra range, it'll put tweaks into the software that effectively turn it into a Model 3 performance single motor.
What the?
You want that? Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
So, coming to the end of our podcast here, but there's a success story that goes along with what prompted this particular session with the VMS discussion. The customer that originally had this problem was on Facebook, one of the Facebook sites. And a number of people chimed in. They told him about the charge port door. They told him about plugging and unplugging. And here's the update from this customer. He says, unplugging the VMS did the trick. The car is back online and charging. Thanks for everyone's help. Much appreciated. So that brings us to a close on another Test of Roadster podcast. We appreciate you joining us. And Brad, thank you for being here to give
Glad
us
to be
the
here.
technical portion.
Thanks, Brad.
We'll see you next week.